was a kid, I used to have one of those.
Yeah.
So off the tip right here,
Yes.
and it becomes like a trumpet or something.
Yes,
right?
it
The
is.
tip here, and well, this is like what I always tell people when I talk about our culture. This was our cell phone over 500 years ago.
Your cell phone, okay?
It's
This is
your
the way
phone.
our people communicated. When we blew this conch shell, you're able to hear it from mountains from one side to the other. It's still used today in the Caribbean.
Believe it or not, people
Okay,
still
we're
use
ready.
it.
We're ready.
It's still used.
Play it for us.
Okay, I'll give you a little one here.
So the idea was to basically get somebody's attention at a far distance.
Absolutely. And it's still being used today in places where they have no electricity back home in Quisqueya and Santo Domingo, where there is no electricity, and the butcher will slaughter a cattle or a hog, and that's the way he communicates of how much meat is left, what meat he has slaughtered for sale, because he has no way to refrigerate it. So they still use it today.
Ilka, how much of the Taino music do we hear in our music today?
Oh.
In Dominican Republic and also in the rest of the islands in the Caribbean, the Taino music was assimilated with the African music, because we were together since the beginning as slaves, and then we were together for the Maroon movement. So these two musics blended together, and today you can listen to it in the countryside, in the folk music, and in these parties that are celebrated for the saints, the Santero music.
Mm-hmm.
So you hear part of the Taino music is inside these manifestations.
But do any of these instruments, like obviously the maracas are still
Yes,
used all
yes,
over the world.
yes.
Are there any other instruments that are strictly Taino that are still as popular as
Yes,
the maraca?
yes, we have the guiro.
Oh, of course, yes.
So the guiro is a Taino descendant also. And it was made in Iguero, gourd.
Gourds.
Yes.
See, it's interesting because sometimes we can't tell which ones came from Africa and which ones are original of the Caribbean, which instruments, I mean.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because a lot of them, like the chekere, we had Bobby Sanabria here, the drummer recently,
Yeah.
and he brought in the chekere, but that comes from Africa, right?
Yes, it's an
like a
African
maraca, but
instrument,
it's like
yes.
this big.
Believe
Yes.
it or not, in the Caribbean, there seems to be a trend where a lot of things that are indigenous seem to get Africanized, you know, and one of them is the guiro. You know, a lot of people there in the Caribbean today, a lot of anthropologists or archaeologists will say that, well, this is actually an African instrument, simply because the Spanish chronicles never mention the Tainos playing the guiro. And mind you that the word guiro is a Taino word, and that they don't use the guiro anywhere in Africa, not even on neither on a tribal level nor on a contemporary music level. And yet somehow something that we've always known that's traditionally Taino is slowly becoming an African instrument.
So do you think, Mr. Esteves, that this is becoming, people are becoming more aware of their roots, their culture, more proud of it, more involved? Is this a reawakening that's going on in New York?
Most definitely, but it's not just amongst the Taino. It's also going on throughout Latin America. There's I would say it's a spiritual need, perhaps, or just that, you know, I guess because of the internet, people are asking questions, and you know, definitely there's an awakening of
I
Taino
gotta agree
identity.
with that. When you say the internet, that's, I guess, one of the biggest tools we have today. We're able to reach, I've met people through the internet that were able to identify with a Taino culture that are in the middle of nowhere, like somewhere in Seattle, Washington, and the only two Tainos there in that area, but they were so happy to find other people that have a commonality.
And isn't it amazing that it's new technology that's reviving indigenous cultures?
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's like contemporary stuff going on, you know.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's fascinating to see that happening. I mean, you know, at least the internet brought us back to our roots.
that's right.
Absolutely.
Even like with the guido, I was saying before, today you have merenguero, they're playing the metal guido, you know. We played the original was the higuera, but you have the metal ones, you know.
Okay, but you got to tell me, Mr. Esteves, about the study, because one of the reasons why we invited you here is because we find now that it's not just in our culture, in our food, in our music, it may still be in our blood.
In our blood.
The Tainos were not extinguished after all.
Correct. So I'll tell you, from the very beginning, like in the beginning of the 1900s, most historians claim that the reason why many Dominicans or Cubans and Puerto Ricans had certain indigenous phenotypes is because of Africans and Spanish mixed to different degrees. Eventually you will get something that looks Indian, and that of course is pretty ridiculous. It's very racist in a sense. So in 1999, Juan Martinez Cruzado, a geneticist from Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, from the University of Mayagüez, decided to do a study, and basically what they did was...
Let's take a break and tell me about the study when we come back. My producer is screaming in my ear. We'll be right back.